Hey everybody, it's Kenya, and this is the Thank You for Saying No podcast, where we find meaning in life's unexpected turns. Cool. Felecia For The Win. Welcome to the Thank You for Saying No podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited that you're here. I have to say, one thing I really like about you is your different glasses that you have. Because I'm a glasses girl, and I don't know if you've seen my logo, but it's literally these glasses, and I just love that you have all these different glasses.
It's an addiction, and I told myself once I got to 7, I could cool it, because it's like you have one for every day of the week. I think you can.
But it's like for different moods too.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's like different. I mean, I also don't have hair. So it's kind of like my way of like, self-expression from the neck up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know Felecia For The Win, she is a software engineer, content creator, writer, and host with a following of over 700,000 followers across social media. And I highlight that because I think what you've created is so just inspiring and cool, especially for other content creators and just in general Okay, before I get into more of that, can you tell the listeners what you create? Like, what is your content about?
So I've had difficulty niching myself down and like figuring out how to accurately label myself. But the best that I've come up with is like, I love to create playful, thought-provoking content. So when we think about social media, I feel like it's a lot of polarizing things on there. Sometimes it's like, it can be like overloaded with negativity. And I love learning new things. And so I feel like, I don't know, like I love that my content is kind of like, if I show up on your feed, you know that you're going to learn something new. You know that we're probably going to laugh a little bit. It's going to be uplifting and a mood lightener.
Yeah.
So
when I was watching your videos, it was a combination of like fun fact, but like really educational and funny.
Exactly.
And I left feeling like not shitty about myself.
Right? It's kind of like infotainment.
Yes. And so what you've created from that is just really impeccable to me because you've grown so much and you really do have like a loyal following and people who follow you around as you've evolved in this journey, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Cool.
But so for the listeners, I always like to say how I met the guests. And so we met in LA at a content creators panel, and you were one of the panelists.
Yes.
And we connected.
That was fun.
That was fun. It was really fun. I've never been to one put on by those two guys.
Me either.
Yeah.
That was amazing. Yeah. But creator events are always fun.
They are.
Like, it's just the energy there is always great. Like, everyone's a creator. But the thing about it is, like, everyone's creating in different ways.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's always, like, a good vibe.
I met a guy who was creating content for a toy, like a spinning toy, or maybe it was a yo-yo thing. Did you see that guy?
Yeah.
Did he do it? I was curious what it was.
Yeah, it was like a spinning top.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, is that what it was?
Something like that.
I never saw him use it.
Me either.
Okay.
But he carried it around like a prop.
Yes, and he has a big following. So there's like a niche for that.
Cool. There's a niche for everything.
There is. I love that. And so you were a panelist at the event.
Yeah.
And I heard you say two things that really stood out to me. One was about Picasso, which we're going to get into at the end, save a little cliffhanger. And then the other was you talked about this, like what I call a corporate no on the show, where you decided to leave a corporate job and start your own sort of entrepreneur independent journey.
Yeah.
And so that's where I want to start this episode today. So tell us about leaving your corporate job, why you did it, all the stuff behind it.
Yeah, great question. And a lovely origin story. So before I've been making content for 2 years, but before I started, That's it. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's literally crazy.
It was a pandemic, baby. Yeah. I've been creating content for maybe a little over 2 years now. But before that, I was actually a software engineer for almost 10 years. And I had worked can I curse?
Yeah.
I can curse on it, right? Okay. I worked my ass off to become this software engineer. Like, I was working part-time jobs, and in my spare time, I would teach myself how to code online. And I finally got to the point where I actually got this corporate job, and it absolutely changed my life. I went from making $34K a year to basically more than tripling that at this corporate job. And it was amazing when I first got there. I loved it. The vibe was great. I had a good team. It was actually super diverse, which I feel like a lot of people wouldn't expect, but it was so diverse. There were so many cool women there, and just all different kinds of people. So it was like an amazing experience. It was like when I first got the feeling for the first time, like I actually entered into a different reality. I was like, whose life is this? This is incredible. I was able to save, invest. It was amazing.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that a few years in, I actually started to get depressed. And it was like, I didn't know what this was. Like, I didn't know what it was from. I feel like when you're not making enough money, it's really easy to kind of credit your bad moods to like, oh, well, if I just had a better job, or if I had more money, or if I could go on more vacations. But when you have all of those things, when you have a good job and you have enough money and you do go on the vacations and the depression is still there, it's like really alarming.
Yeah.
And yeah, that is essentially what led me to starting to question like, wow, what if this isn't for me? Like, this is literally the perfect job. What if this isn't for me? What does that mean? Like, am I not destined for a life of happiness or what?
Was it something you weren't feeling fulfilled? Was it something like that?
Yeah, I think that it ultimately ended up being more like an inclination or like an intuitive feeling that this wasn't for me, actually. Like, that idea was scary when I was there. Like, what if this isn't for me? But it actually ended up being the truth. Like, no, this isn't what you're meant to do with your life.
Yeah.
And before we started, we were actually talking about a situation where like one of us like lost someone, and I wanted to save what I'm about to say now for the conversation.
Okay, yeah.
So
should I set it up?
Oh,
wait, let me set it up.
Okay.
So for the listeners, we were talking about how I started the podcast, which they know was from a series of rejections, like 200.
Yeah, exactly.
Exact. And, the mantra of thank you for saying no. But what really pushed me to start the podcast and like gave me that momentum was losing someone really close to me to a fentanyl overdose. And I wanted to create a catalog for people to listen to when they're going through what we call no moments.
Yeah.
And so you said, I'm going to save my response
Yes.
for when we record.
Yes. So something similar actually happened to me where like a childhood friend actually passed in like a tragic and unexpected car accident. And they were my age. So around then I was maybe like 29 or something like that. And it just hit me like, wow, life is so precious. And every day is not promised.
Yeah.
And so we kind of have a responsibility to ourselves to like listen to those thoughts. So like back to the depression that I was having, like I had a responsibility to follow that thought pattern and to see where it led me, because every day isn't promised. So after that happened to my friend, it really forced me to start thinking of my life differently. Like I had always imagined the destination being this corporate job, but now that I was here, it was like, okay, well, if this isn't the destination, like what's next? And how do I get out of here? And yeah, what's really interesting is I started making content, but one of the first viral videos that I had was actually about my journey exiting corporate America.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I feel like that's a topic people can really relate to.
100%.
Yeah.
So here's what I did. I set up this whole plan to like leave corporate America, but I wasn't really sure if I was going to be gone for good. In fact, my plan was like, okay, well, maybe I can just take a year off and kind of go on like a sabbatical, almost like learn new skills, maybe travel, and then get back into tech, get back into the workforce. And so I created a retirement plan for myself, actually, that would enable me to like do this, because I just realized that since life is so precious, we really, or I'll speak for myself, I really don't want to spend my entire life working this job that I know isn't fulfilling me, all for the promise of like, when I get to 65, I can then retire. So the idea was like, well, how do I retire as you go? So like, that's what I called it. Is like, I created a retire as you go plan where I essentially saved 30% of my income. So that way, after 3 years, I can literally live off of 1 year's worth of income. Okay, and then I would like go back into the workforce and do it again. And so, yeah, I basically set that up for myself. I quit my job with like 1 year's worth of salary. During that time, the skill that I chose to learn was like content creation. And yeah, it just kind of took off from there. And like now I actually don't think I'll end up going back, but that is my origin story technically.
Wow. So what does fulfill you? Did you find that along your journey?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like What I've learned from doing content, which is like so creative and not at all like what it was like to be an engineer, which everything is like very left-brained and content is like very much like mostly right-brained. What I've learned is like all of the things that used to pique my interest as a child, if I try those things now, like those tend to be my most successful things, like the things that I'm genuinely best at, and also the things that other people appreciate as well. So, for example, I was a theater kid, and so making content, it's kind of a version of that.
Totally.
I also was really into writing as a kid. Like when I was a kid, and if you asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would always say like an author or something like that. And so I write now as well. A lot of my deep dive posts are like actually scripted. And so I feel like just listening to that inner child has been the way to go.
Totally. And so you started your content creation, and what did it start as? Was it like videos, or what did it start? Was it blog?
Yeah. Well, if you were to look at my Instagram Explore page right now, it would be full of interior design. That's like actually my number one interest, is like, I just love it. Like I just love interior design. And so that's actually what I started making. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't really picking up traction, but really the thing was like eventually, I mean, I can be kind of opinionated and talkative. And so one day I just kind of broke the fourth wall a little bit, and I had something on my mind, and I like pulled my phone out and I started talking about it. And that video got maybe like 5x what any of my interior design videos got. And I was like, oh, they want to hear me talk. I can do that. So I just made the pivot to talking videos after that.
Yeah. So for me, whenever I start something new, I try and plan it out so perfectly and like anticipate everything that could possibly happen, and just have like one idea so focused. But what I've learned, the more I've engaged with ideas and explored ideas that I've had, they actually evolve with time. Like even the podcast started as strictly interview, but now we have like people write in, we have like short form content, we have like other ways to kind of spread the thank you for saying no idea instead of just like interviews like this. And so I never, like, I was pretty strict about it at the beginning. But I think because I've expanded the way thank you for saying no can be, like, expressed through content and episodes has allowed the podcast to grow a lot. Yeah. Has that happened for you?
100%. But that's been, like, one of the harder things for me to learn. So, like, engineering and, like, left brain activity is very much based on, like, what's the system? What's the system? What's the logic? What are the steps that we're going to follow? What's the process? But being a creative is much more about like inspiration. It's about like going with the flow. It's in a way like letting go more than I was used to. So like, I used to be like kind of rigid in my ideas where I would be like, no, I have to post like 5 times a week. But then the idea is like, well, what if you don't? Or the thought is, what if you don't have 5 ideas? What are you going to do? Are you going to like force it out? Is that fun? Did you quit your job to force things? Like what's going on here? So it's actually more of like what I've learned is that I've had to get used to like trusting myself, trusting that like more ideas will come. And when they come, like that's when I'll create content. So it's a completely different game.
Yeah. I actually get that. Interestingly, my Instagram posts do better when I'm just straight talking to the camera, like asking an engaging question. Yeah. But it's me talking versus like posting a clip from an episode or something, or although some of those have done well. But I've noticed that the times when I'm talking directly to the camera, like they do so well. I'm like, oh my gosh, now I have to record these.
Right, exactly.
But it's good, like, because I like to connect with the audience. Like that's the point of content, is to connect with the audience.
Yeah. And it's like, when you're in that mood, like, oh, I just have something on my mind, like I got to get it out. I don't know. I kind of feel like there's something like cosmic going on there where like that mood is also tapped into like the zeitgeist of the day or of the times. So it's kind of like for example, something could happen in our society today that would maybe like the next day everyone in society might feel kind of like somber because of something tragic that happened today, for example. And so it's kind of like, even if you were to talk about like the same topic on the day before the tragic event or the day after the tragic event. Like, it's actually all based on how we all are feeling as a community a little bit. Yeah. So I feel like those impromptu videos do well because it's like, it's tapped into the energy, you know, like the hive mind energy or something like that.
I remember I posted one the other day and my mom was like, how did you think of that? I was like, it just came to me.
Right? Exactly.
And it did really well.
Yeah.
So how is content creation for you, like, fulfilling? Does it align with your purpose? And I know we talked about fulfillment, but what do you feel like your purpose is where you don't feel like you need an exit strategy for this, at least yet?
That's such a great idea, or a great question, a great idea, all of that. I feel like I'm still, I don't know. I think that I've kind of let go of the idea of like needing to have a purpose, right? It's more so about, for me, I think it's about like, what is the life that like I just want to live? You know, what's a lifestyle where I'm like genuinely excited to wake up every day. Yeah. I'm like doing something fun. One thing that I got from like being a corporate software engineer was like, I loved the social cred that came with that. So like, that's something that's also important to me, is like being respected by my peers. And so I think it's about like having like those values, and whatever it is that I'm doing, is like, I always want to make sure that like I'm respected by my peers. I always want to make sure that like I'm pursuing something that allows me to interact with and maybe one day meet like my idols. And so it's kind of like that, as opposed to like a purpose in my mind. But I do think that in this day and age, it's really important to, for me, it's been really important to be like a positive light. Yeah. Because sometimes I get on social media, or even just like with the actual realities that are happening in the world, there are so many things that can get us down, you know? And so I have found that it has been really important to me to like be a light in the darkness whenever I can. I don't know. I guess maybe that's like a purpose.
No, it does. So hearing you say all that, to me, it sounds like and I don't want to like be like, this is your purpose, but to me, it sounds like being authentic is sort of your purpose. And to be a positive light, you have to be authentic for yourself and be doing things that are fulfilling, that feel authentic for you. Yeah. For you to even give that to other people.
100%.
So authenticity.
I mean, authenticity 1,000%. I mean, you know, why be anything other than yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I worked in immigration law before going to law school, and I worked at a lot of the firm's offices, like one firm, but many offices. And I was sort of thinking of working in immigration after law school. And I was starting to get good at it because I worked in like every fucking office they had. Like before law school, I worked in 2 offices. During law school, I worked in another office. So I was like, I knew the system. I understood how it worked. But I couldn't like get myself to like have the conversation. Yeah. You know what I mean? Right. And they were like, well, when are you coming back? And like this and that. I'm like, because it didn't align. It didn't feel right. Like I went to law school to be an environmental attorney, and that's what I wanted to do. And now that I'm doing it, I'm like I feel fulfilled every single day.
That's amazing.
It is. I'm so grateful for that.
That's incredible.
But that like feeling, when you're feeling that discomfort and you're like, why am I depressed? Why am I sad? I don't know. I shouldn't be. Right. It's like, it can be like you're not aligned. Like
exactly. Something's out of alignment. Yeah. You know? And it's so interesting because like my life was a lot softer back then. Like I was working from home, like, and you know, versus now, I'm like almost as successful now, financially as I was then. So, but like my days are insane now. Like I'm absolutely working more now than I was working then. Yeah. And making like equal to or like less money sometimes. But it's like so much more fun, you know? It's so much more fun. It's so much more fulfilling to be doing something for yourself, to like make your own schedule. Yeah. At least for me, getting the corporate job was like my way of reaching financial freedom. But then once I got there, I was like, wait, now I want temporal freedom. Like now I want freedom over my time, freedom over my schedule. I want to be my own boss. And so then I got that by quitting. And then I was like, wait, I want that financial freedom again. Like, hold up, let's bring that financial freedom back. Yeah. And so now it's been like, you know, trying to figure out how to like get all of those things. How do I have like the finances and the spare time? Yeah. Or maybe it's not about the spare time. Maybe it's about all of my time is allocated, but it's all for things that light me up, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's been like an amazing, fun, sometimes challenging journey.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so far it's been going great. And yeah, I would definitely encourage anyone out there, you know, if you're in these corporate worlds and you kind of have that, you know, that safe haven, that nest. I know it can seem so scary to like get out there and do your own thing, but in my experience, there are people who are meant for corporate jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and then there are people who aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a value judgment on anyone. I genuinely wish that I could have been happy in my corporate job. I mean, I worked my ass off to get there, but it just wasn't for me. And I was scared to take the leap and to explore something else. But ultimately, now I realize that like I was getting that feeling back then for a reason. And, you know, I was going to figure it out. So anyone who has that feeling,
Mm-hmm.
as long as you're dedicated to figuring it out, you know, maybe they don't need the corporate world.
How did you figure it out, though?
Well, see, that's where like being an engineer actually came in handy.
Mm-hmm.
So like I can honestly say that everything that I figured out has been from being committed to like constantly experimenting and constantly being open-minded with like trying new things. For example, when I first quit my job and I first got into content, I came across some video on TikTok of someone saying that they grew their account by posting 10 times a day.
Oh my God.
That's a lot, right?
That's like 70
Yeah.
times 4 is
Yeah.
280 videos a month.
A month, yeah.
What are they just sneezing? Like, what are they saying?
I know, right?
I don't have that many things.
It's insane. I know. Yep, exactly.
Okay.
But I saw this video and I said, if I make 10 videos a day and nothing happens, then maybe making content isn't the thing for me and I need to like move on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I set up that experiment for myself. This was like the first thing I did. So I said, I'm going to post 10 times a day for 30 days
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to see what happens, because if nothing happens, then maybe I'll move on to YouTube or maybe I'll move on to like some other endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
But within that 30 days, something did happen.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up getting like 200,000 followers like within that month.
Wow.
And I ended up like, that's how I quickly found out like, oh, posting interior design content, like that's not my thing. Like I was able to quickly figure out these things.
Okay.
Because I set up that initial experiment for myself.
Yes.
Another example is, so making money as a creator has been so hard to figure out. And I can't even believe that like I'm actually the person that like where I'm sitting today, I can't believe that I'm actually figuring it out, like because it's been so hard.
Yeah.
So I basically tried making money like so many different ways. So like I had an ebook, I tried selling shirts, sponsorships with brands, I tried UGC, like I tried like all of the things. Like if you just Google ways that creators can make money, I probably tried every single thing on that list.
Mm-hmm.
And through doing those experiments and just trying everything, I've been able to find like, oh, these are the ones that work for me. Oh, these are the 3 income streams that actually work for me. And these are, you know, the other ones don't. But just having an experimental like mentality has really been the key for me.
Yeah. I like that. I have said before on the show how try different things where the stakes are low.
Yeah.
So you can just get used to trying and things not working out and moving on and carrying on like it's no big deal.
Right.
So when things don't work out, when the stakes are higher, you're like already accustomed to figuring it out. And that sounds like your experiment. You just, if it didn't work, you try on the next thing.
Exactly.
No big deal.
Yeah. And that's the other thing with like saying no. It's like sometimes the universe says no. Like sometimes the universe is like, bitch, you're not supposed to be making shirts. Like, what are you really doing right now? Shirts? Hey, but it might be the thing for someone else.
Yeah.
It is the thing for a lot of people.
Totally.
But like, you know, if you don't knock on all of those doors, then you'll never find the one, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes the universe says no.
The universe tells me no almost every day. Can you tell us the Picasso story?
Yes. Okay. It's so crazy because I learned this story and then I said it maybe like once a day for like 5 days after I first learned it myself. But yeah, so this is a story about Pablo Picasso. I mentioned this when I was on the panel because I think I think I was asked a question about what was the question about? I'm like trying to
No,
think
I
of the
remember.
context.
So she asked you about your in-person events and if you didn't feel like you were like equipped to do them.
Yes, exactly, right? Or I think it was also something about it had something to do with,
because I think you had never done them before and you just started. And she was like, did you feel something of the essence of that?
right,
Not those
right.
exact words.
Something about like having the confidence or something, or perhaps like having the confidence to do in-person events, which is like the main thing that I do now. My main bread and butter now is doing in-person events. And right, it was because it has taken off, right? So we just launched these in-person events this summer, and it has kind of taken off like so fast. And the question that she asked was about like the speed, like the fact that it happened so fast, and like how crazy it is. And then I told this story, and then I'm gonna wrap it up. So Pablo Picasso, right, walks into a cafe. He's gonna get a coffee. He sits down, pulls out a napkin, and he starts drawing on this napkin. Well, the lady who's sitting at the table next to him sees what he's doodling and is like, hold up, that's actually pretty good over there. So anyway, he finishes his coffee. He's about to leave. He takes the napkin, balls it up, and he's about to trash it. But the lady who was sitting next to him stops him, goes up to him and says like, hey, before you throw that out, can I get that napkin that you were just doodling on? That was actually really good. And he said, yeah, you can have it. That'll be $2,000. And she's like, $2,000? It literally took you 15 minutes. You did that while you were drinking coffee. Like, why would I give you $2,000 for something that only took you 15 minutes? And that's when he goes, it didn't take me 15 minutes. It actually took me 30 years.
Yeah.
And so it kind of ties into that phrase that we all know, which is like, no one is an overnight success, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the same thing that has happened with my in-person events. Like, it's really interesting. Like, it has kind of blown up within the matter of like 2 months. But at the same time, it's because of all of the skills that I learned from like storytelling, from being a content creator for 2 years. And so it's really just like the tip of the iceberg. It's like the culmination of what those 2 years have gotten me.
Yeah.
Has essentially created something that seems like it's an overnight success, but it's totally not.
Yeah, you worked for years and years, even before just the 2 years of content creation. It's your years of everything before that.
Exactly.
Using skills from other things to this events.
Right. It's like, great, now I'm doing in-person events and this works, and it seems like it happened overnight, but like, what about the shirts? Like, no one knows that. No one knows about the failed shirts. No one knows about like the ebook. No one knows about like, the other things that I tried. So yeah, it seems like this is an overnight success, but it's like, I tried 7 other things and this is the one that worked.
Yeah.
So it's a more accurate story,
And for the listeners, to describe the evolution of what you're creating, like the storytelling and the what did you call it? Info fun?
Yeah, like the infotainment. Yeah. My content, yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like that it started as videos and it's transferred. You had a PBS segment that I saw and now you have these in-person events, but they're wildly popular. Like you know what I mean? Like, isn't there a wait list for them?
There is an insane wait list. It's just all so insane and like kind of surreal because once again, like I'm me, right? So it's like, I know all of the failures. Like, I know all of the experiments. I know all of the things that we've tried that have not amounted to anything. And so it has actually been so wild to actually try something that did amount to something. It's actually been kind of like hard to psychologically get used to.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, one of my favorite things about like the in-person events that we're doing is that it feels like an extension of my content. So like my content is like, once again, it's like this infotainment, playful, thought-provoking content. And it's basically like, I'm the type of person that I love reading articles. I love reading books. I love learning new things, listening to podcasts. Sometimes I would go to lectures and I would learn things there. And so that's where, the origin of a lot of my content is. And yeah, so the in-person event that we just launched is essentially lectures in person. It's called Lectures on Tap. It just launched in New York City. And basically it's lectures in bars. So every week we go to a new bar in New York City and we rent it out. And then a professor comes and gives a lecture for people to listen to over drinks. And yeah, it's awesome because it just feels like an extension of my online content. Yeah. And it's also awesome because going back to authenticity, it's something that I was already doing before I launched it. Mm-hmm. And so once again, like people might see it now and they're like, wow, this thing is crazy successful. And it's like, that's because like I've been going to similar events for like years and years and years. So me throwing one is based on like all of the successful ones that like I've been a part of, the ones that I've gone to. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's so many awesome and amazing things about it. I'm like so happy to actually have landed on something that feels unique to my brand. Yeah. And also is something that I genuinely enjoy doing in person because I was literally doing it in person before. I just wasn't hosting it. It just wasn't mine. Yeah. So yeah, it's been great.
It kind of ties back to how when I started my podcast, I really had like a very particular vision of just only interviews, mm-hmm. like minimal social media presence. But then as it evolved, the podcast was able to grow and we've been able to reach a wider audience. And same with you. Like I'm sure you are able to reach more people and have more genuine connections, especially when people come in person and stuff.
100%. It's been so freaking fulfilling. Like I can't, there's no words. Yeah. Like when you actually throw the dart and it hits the bullseye, it's kind of like, wait, what just happened exactly? It's so insane. But yeah, so it's so fulfilling. Once again, like one of the things that I learned from being a software engineer that was important to me was like having access to the people who I respected. Mm-hmm. So like as someone who loves to learn, like I love authors, I love journalists, I love like these are the people who I get my information from. And so it's been really fulfilling to be able to like actually reach out to the people who write the articles that I read and just be like, hey, do you want to give a lecture on this topic? Yeah. And then, you know, we bond in the process of like getting them to become a lecturer. And then obviously there's like a friendship that develops there. And so, I mean, it's just so synergetic and aligned. It's insane. And yeah, I just think about like my past self who was like working in corporate and it's like, there actually is something more aligned here, just up along the horizon.
So here's the golden ticket question. Are you thankful for the no? Sounds like yes.
100%. 100%. Yeah. But, and the other thing that I like try to tell myself is, you know, once an engineer, always an engineer. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, even though I'm not coding anymore and I miss coding and I like worked my ass off so hard to become a professional coder, that's always going to be a part of me. So like, I don't need to mourn that version of myself anymore. Right. I can like integrate that now in the way that I kind of like engineer my life. I engineer my lifestyle. I engineer, you know, my income streams. I engineer what my content is going to look like on my page. So I have tried to like integrate it more. Yeah. But yes, eternally thankful for the universe saying no and causing me to be depressed. Thank you, universe, for making me depressed. Like you were really onto something.
And what would you say to listeners who are feeling stuck or feeling fearful to start something new or try something new, or the idea isn't developing as they thought? What would you say to them?
If you're afraid, that's a great fucking sign. Almost everything that is now like successful in my life has come from overcoming a fear. Like even in launching these in-person events, I was terrified. It was actually really scary to like launch an in-person event, to be this like digital person, and then to have the confidence that anyone would actually want to go to something in person. Like it was a leap, and it was so scary. It was just as scary when I was like quitting my job. It's all scary. Yeah. And I think that that's the thing is like people, it's not that people aren't afraid, it's that they do it anyway. They like work through it. Yeah. And so trust me, I'm afraid. I'm always afraid. It's just
shaking my
boots. Right? Always, constantly. But I just don't let that define me or stop me, you know? So 100%. If they're afraid, like congrats, like that's the first step. And now the next step is to like do it anyway. Yeah. Fuck that shit. Don't let your fear control you, you know? You have to put the lasso around the fear.
100%.
How it has to go.
Anytime I've ever accomplished something that was like worthwhile, I was about to throw up.
Right?
100%.
It's a great sign. If you're afraid, it's like, oh, I'm on the edge. I've never been here before. This is something that I don't know. And it's like, yeah, the unknown can be scary because it's like, well, what if something bad happens? that I'm not prepared for.
But here's the thing.
Yes.
Which is, you're about to say this. Yep. But go ahead. You're prepared for whatever the bad thing is.
Oh, that's not what I was going to say.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say something bad might happen, but something good might happen as well.
Yeah.
And so that's like the thing is, I want to hear yours though too. But, that's the thing. Like another like phrase that I say sometimes is like, in order to win a game, so any game, in order to win, you have to be willing to lose. That's what it means to play.
Yeah.
Right? So you can't ever play a game and the possibility of losing isn't there. Mm-hmm. So once you just understand that it's like, oh, this is just how you play. Like, you might lose sometimes and that's not a big deal. It's like the only way to ever win is to risk losing. And so, yeah, like the fear literally doesn't mean anything. Yeah. It just means you're somewhere you've never been.
That really spoke to me just now.
What were you gonna say though? You're prepared for
whatever
for the loss.
Yeah, even if it's not how you thought it would turn out, or even if it was a really hard no, like you can handle that no and you can turn it around to be what it's supposed to be.
Right.
Like you can do that.
Exactly.
Whoever you is listening, you, me, Wolf, like we can all turn the no's around to what they're supposed to be.
Exactly. In fact, it's like sometimes the no's are really like the arrows to tell you like, okay, not this door, not this door, like not this direction, not this direction. Like sometimes the no's are like literal tools.
Yeah.
And so it's just all a good thing. It's just great. Like that's why I really love the theme of your show, this idea of like, thank you for saying no, because as long as the no's don't stop us, if we just tell ourselves that every time we get a no, we're just gathering more information.
Yep.
And then we use that information to like continue to move forward, the no's are actually extremely valuable.
So valuable.
Yeah. And they're great.
Oh my God. Thank you for saying that. I love when that happens. That's like that is exactly the point of the podcast. Right. Is to point out to people that we're just information gathering. Like we're just learning about ourselves. We're learning about how we navigate the world through no's, how we handle challenges. Like no's can be a really, really good thing once you get out of like the funk of it.
Exactly. 100%.
Oh.
You just detach, just dissociate everyone and then it'll all be easier to digest. But it's true, right?
No,
like if you separate yourself from the no's and get to this point where like you're not taking it personal, then it's like so much easier.
Yeah.
Like literally view it as information and not like value judgments.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I just get it. I totally get it.
Right?
That what spoke to me from what you said earlier about playing the game means you might lose, but it also means you might win.
Right.
I'm a trial attorney, so we go to court. Like we fight. Like, a lot of attorneys like don't see court, they settle, whatever. But we go to trial.
Okay.
We go to trial.
Okay.
And so it is intense because that's part of the game. Like you can lose. That's part of the risk of going to trial is you might not win.
Right.
But when I go in and I give my best performance and I like feel like I didn't leave any arguments out, I didn't leave any facts out, like I really feel like I did my best, like if I win or lose, it's irrelevant because I did everything I knew that I could do.
100%.
And that's more valuable. Well, obviously I want to win. Like I want to win.
Right.
But it's valuable knowing that I'm capable of everything that I put out there, no matter what the outcome is going to be.
Exactly. And that's when, we realize it wasn't actually the win that we were obsessed with. It was actually the fact that like the win was just like the carrot being dangled in front of us to get us to do our best, because that's what's actually fulfilling is like pushing ourselves to the point where it's like, wow, I really did my best there. Like that's my best. Like I'm really her. Like I actually did my best and that's what it is. Like that's amazing. And the win is like the motivator that gets us to expand and be that. But yeah, I've had that experience too, where it's just like, actually, it doesn't matter if I win, especially with content. Like sometimes it's like, actually, I don't really care if it goes viral. Like I know that I did my best and like I really wanted to get that off my chest. And this is something that I wanted to share.
Yeah.
Of course, it's great if it goes viral, just like you're saying, right? Of course, it's great if we win.
Right.
But there's a level above that where it's like, but it's kind of better that like we just actually did our best.
Yeah. Like,
that's
I
actually
learned
better
what
than
I'm
the win.
capable of.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Okay, let's end on this. What advice would you give to someone going through a no moment, knowing like how thankful you are having come out of a no moment?
Yeah, again, I think it's about like not taking it personal. Like, when you really realize like it's actually never personal. So like another word we keep throwing around is like alignment. Some things literally just aren't aligned.
Yeah.
So like, for example, we're here now at What the Fuck Media, and it's like, what if this room was booked?
I know.
You know? Should we take that personal? Like, of course not. Because some things are just not aligned. Like, and that's really what I think life is about. It's about finding alignment. Like, who are the people who are aligned? What are the things that you can do that are aligned with like who you really are? And how do you like get as many of these things in alignment with each other? And so it's like, you know, if you're going through a no moment, like let's say you got a rejection of some sort, it literally doesn't mean anything about you personally. It just means that something's out of alignment.
Yeah. There's something else out there for you.
There's something else that is in alignment. And we just have to find that thing. Yeah. And that's it.
I have to say this episode was super duper aligned. like I met you in LA at an event that I almost didn't make it to. And you were visiting from New York.
Right.
And then we connected.
Yeah.
And then I almost didn't reach out because I was embarrassed it took me so long to reach out to you. But then I did anyways. And then Wolf is our engineer who I've been Instagram friends with for like a while now. I've never met him in person. And then he was able to record only on this day because his family's here. And then this time and date worked for you. And this was the only room available at this time.
And here we are. This is the real manifestation, everybody. Yeah. This is how it works.
We made it. I took a red eye. I got here this morning. Everything worked out.
Right. But there's an additional layer on top of that, which is when you brought it up to me at the event in LA, I said, I've been wanting to go there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
So, like, I had been eyeing this on my own, on my whole own journey. And then imagine, for months, I'm like, yeah, I really want to go in there. I've been, like, learning about the founders. I'm, like, watching interviews with the founders of this place. Then I go to LA for this event. And then imagine, this is my perspective. Someone comes up to me and is like, I want to go to this place to do a podcast. What? That's so aligned. Yeah. And so that's what it's all about, you know? That's what it's about.
I think we have to end on that note. But tell the listeners where they can find you and you know, what you got going on and stuff.
Okay. You guys can find me anywhere. My name is Felecia For The Win. So yeah, TikTok, Instagram, all of that. Would love to see you there. Also, if you're in New York or visiting New York, would love for you to check out Lectures on Tap. Once again, professors and experts come into bars to give lectures, so they're always a great time and a good vibe, really fun thing for intellectuals to do. Yeah, I'm actually doing that later today.
Oh, nice.
And so, yeah, this has been awesome. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much for being here. Follow and subscribe to the Thank You for Saying No podcast, and you'll get every episode as soon as it's released.